I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm Lindsay Allard-Anyamba, and I'm joined by Nicole Sharp. We're from School Readiness Consulting, and we would love to welcome you to this conversation today. We appreciate your time. We're looking forward to being able to talk a little bit with you about the importance of storytelling. This also feels like an important moment to launch what we think is a really exciting effort. Is being sponsored by the Pennsylvania Office of Child Development and Early Learning, which is obviously your partner on the Community Innovation Zone's work. So OCDEL had been in conversation with School Readiness Consulting. We came out and met with many of you at your grantee meetings. Some of you are engaged in an ongoing study that we're doing around family engagement in the Community Innovation Zone. We've been having a lot of conversation about how important the work is that each of the grantees are doing, and how important it is that the stories that you are able to make it to your stakeholders, your communities, and even beyond. And so this webinar is really an effort to kick off a storytelling and communications initiative to show you high-level strategies within the next few minutes that will assist you potentially in just thinking about yourselves as not just folks who do great work and run great peace alignment, family engagement, and early learning programs and projects, but those also folks who are able to effectively communicate that work to those who are important, and they may be politicians or policy makers, they may be the families that you're serving, it may be other community partners, or as I said earlier, it may be folks on your community or even beyond the state of Pennsylvania who could benefit from the learnings that you're experiencing, the stories that you have to tell. So first and most important question is, kind of, isn't it all of the hard work? And we know that you are all deeply engaged, not only your Community Innovation Zone work, but also very likely a lot of related work around supporting children, families, and communities. And so I think it's important to begin the conversation by answering the question about why would it be an important use of your already extremely limited time. And storytelling can raise awareness about not only the work you're doing, but why you're doing it. It can accelerate change in positive practices. It can generate excitement. It can empower stakeholders to advocate. It can generate new revenue and investment and public will around what it is that your mission is in the work that you're doing. And so we tell stories to have an impact and make an impression and to try to achieve a particular outcome. I think there might be a few people who aren't on mute. If you go to the right of your screen and just pop yourself on mute, that would be really helpful to reduce the background noise. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go through, to begin, we think are 5 really important ideas around storytelling. So storytelling, in order to create impact, can inform, to tell others about your efforts, highlight your successes, your challenges, and your lessons learned. It can involve others to become more engaged in your efforts and to be able to talk about them more broadly than the project or program can reach on its own. It can create investment, as I said a moment ago. This is obviously a big one in early childhood education. We're always in need of additional resources and funding, and so your story can be used to advocate for new investments and resources, which may be funds, but it may also be time, materials, or partnerships. And finally, the impact of storytelling can be around influence. So stories can be used to change views of others about your effort or about kind of the larger outcome that you are hoping to achieve. So outcomes for children and families. should never really be about the sake of telling stories. They're a powerful means to an end. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today, and we'll continue to talk about as we hopefully have opportunities to work with each of you as grantee teams, really thinking about your desired impact and you both locate that and then work towards using strategy to tell a successful story that will help you get to those eyes that we just discussed. So in order to do that, you want to define success. What measurable outcomes would make your storytelling initiative successful? You want to consider what end result is most important, and you want to think about what actions do you want to inspire to your audience to take. And so they'll filter your storytelling choices through your goal. Every choice you make should align with the answers to those questions. If we could, everybody just please mute yourself on the right, that would be great.
Thinking that Caroline gave out today. Yeah.
No matter your intended outcome for storytelling, it's important to map that out first.
And send that out to the
summer people?
To the summer people. Because like they don't need to know like course title, or we could just write like water workshop.
I'm just gonna go ahead and do.
What if we send the same thing to like
some meeting? Please pardon me for just one moment.
The one that we gave the teachers at the end of the year wasn't exactly.
I mean, I'll go through and tweet one of the words.
Keep it simple. We just wanted to.
Oh, great. About mapping it out. We want to really help you think about the steps that you take to make sure you have the right message for the right audience and you're clear about the desired impact. So a few things that are all building blocks of storytelling. And we're going to go through those and make sure that we explain them, and then we're going to show you how they look in action. So 5 building blocks of storytelling are: number 1, having an effective character; 2, having a clear trajectory; authenticity in your story, including action-oriented emotions, and a hook. I don't know if anybody else feels like they're going back to 3rd grade story reading class, but it's really the same simple building blocks that we all learned about a long time ago, and now we're just thinking them in a different way as it relates to our work as advocates for young children. So the first component building block is an effective character. And one thing that we see a lot when folks are writing about their successful efforts is that we talk about families and children, but we don't enough talk about specific families or specific children and their experiences in our project and programs. Those of you who are participating in our study may remember that we've asked you actually to talk about specific families and really try to hone in on the impact of your project or your program on individuals. We know that having an effective character is relatable. It makes people able to identify with your story. And so the most compelling and effective stories have a single character as their focal point. And always have to be a child or a family. I think that's important to say. It could be a staff person, a volunteer, a board member, or even a member of the larger community that you was impacted through your work. Building block is a trajectory, which really sounds obvious, but effective stories have a clear beginning, middle, and end, and should chronicle something that happens, an experience, a journey, a transformation, a lesson learned, and really have a create an effort to show an impact. One of the important ways to show the trajectory of a story is through the journey of that primary character, where we're introduced to the character at the beginning and follow that character as she or he faces a series of challenges, ultimately being in a situation where we see a resolution and maybe a glimpse at how her life or life might be different. And so we want to think about the story from the perspective of the experience of the journey of that primary character. So each of these blocks builds upon one another. Authenticity, I'm sure you all know is a really important part of storytelling. And I don't think this is a difficult one because all of the work you're doing out in your communities with children and families is very real and very close to the important critical needs that families have around raising and educating their children. And so I think this one is important to note, but I think that, it's something that I'm sure that all of you will keep in consideration. It helps you really think about what the right details are to emphasize, and whenever possible, allowing your stories to be told from a character perspective or point of view, rather than our point of view as the organization. So I think that's one of the most important things to think about. The building block is around action-oriented emotions. So stories can't just be about what happened and the journey, but they have to really tie into the character's experience and her emotions and convey not the emotions of the character, but should compel emotions of the readers or the listeners or those who are experiencing your story. And good action-oriented emotional stories will cause people to act, and they'll help folks to find clear, easy-to-find pathways to desired actions that you have around the purpose or strategy of your story. So a storyteller, you should have a concrete purpose that's clearly translated into a call to action, and you boost the odds of your audience following through on that call to action by appealing to their emotions. So your stories to be framed in terms of action-oriented emotions, which invoke not only a feeling, but a desire to act upon that feeling. A hook. So stories should capture the audience's attention as quickly as possible. We know that in the age of social media, people read less and can kind of engage in less overall because we're just used to being able to get bits of information and get what we need from them. And so a hook becomes even more and more important, I think, every year that technology advances. A hook is really what provides your listener or your reader or your recipient a reason to care. And a solid narrative hook, again, back to creative writing class, includes 3 questions to have answered for your audience, which is whose story is this, what's happening, and what might be at stake. So we're going to move from this and show you a little bit of an example of some storytelling work that we've been doing in early learning, and that I think will hopefully kind of illustrate some of the building blocks that we've just discussed. So School Readiness Consulting partnered with Mom Rising and the National League of Cities on what's called the Strong Start for Strong Cities initiative to support access to high-quality early learning opportunities in cities across the nation. Out of this work, there was a book that was developed, a booklet, I think is probably a better word for it, that highlighted best practices and stories from families living in each of the 50 states across the country. So amplifying what mayors and leaders can do along with effectively portraying the need through the use of effective storytelling in their local communities was the objective of this booklet. So the recent press events that took place involving leadership from each of the organizations, mayors and Mom Rising members, as well as the moms and some dads that told stories in this book, helped to kind of provide examples of experiences that increase everybody's understanding of the importance of early childhood. I'm going to show you one of the stories that comes out of Strong Start for Strong Cities. There's also, as you can see, a link on your on the slide where you can go and download the whole book and give it to your mayor if you'd like. But for the purposes of today, we're going to talk about Angelica, who is from Tacoma, Washington. And I'm going to give you just a minute or two to read Angelica's story, and then we'll talk about it a bit. hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look. I'm sure you've started to kind of map on some of the building blocks, but the effective character clearly in the story is Angelica, and she's a mom of 3 young children. The trajectory of this story is the law school, her admittance to law school, and the cost of the child care and the challenge that she was facing around that. I think the authenticity is that this is a real story that families, students, but families of all types face across our country. And action-oriented emotion in this story was, you can really feel Angelica's frustration and her motivation for action when she says, enough is enough, it's time for a change. I think the hook or the reason to care is thinking about what's at stake. In the first sentence, the mother was admitted to law school, but she was about to turn down being admitted into law school because of the cost of child care. She further reiterated or drove home this point with a powerful closing. Students are struggling to make ends meet between the cost of tuition and child care for their young children, and it shouldn't be a requirement for student parents to be able to go to school to pursue their dreams and create brighter futures for their families. So this is a very short and simple story. You can see it has a tremendous impact. And so one of the things we hope that we'll have an opportunity to work with you on is finding the stories of, as we said earlier, the families, the staff, the leadership, the community that are really being impacted by the work that's happening in the Community Innovation Zones and finding ways to tell those stories. So the things that we just wanted to give you to think about around storytelling as a whole, is the importance of considering your audience. Your message will be perhaps delivered differently for different audiences and will obviously depend on the impact that you want your message to have. To keep your message simple and concise, less is always more. As you saw with Angelica's story, it took less than 1 minute to read that story, but it said so much. So we're going to work always in storytelling to highlight the main ideas and to build from there concisely and simply. Use plain language. So there was no jargon or acronyms in Angelica's story. One of the things that we know is that readers often skip over terms that they don't understand, and they hope to get the meaning from the rest of the sentence, and rather they don't have to do that. We'd rather that they understand everything that they're reading. And so education and in family services, sometimes there's a lot that's known to us as a field, and so if we're considering our audience, we really make sure we're thoughtful about kinds of language that would be understood by everybody. Using data, and so one of the things that we'll definitely hope to be working with you on is think about what data you have that can strengthen and lift up your message. At a recent conference, Linda Smith from the Administration for Children and Families shared, policy is a combination of research, data, and stories, and you need all 3 to make a difference. So that high-quality data that's reliable and trustworthy can absolutely strengthen your message. And including images when it makes sense. Pictures can help to visually reinforce your message and absolutely grab the attention of your audience. One of the things that we've done as a part of this webinar is that we've created a quick template outlining these building blocks that we've just discussed and a few other strategies we went over. And hopefully this guide will be a tool for reflection and a reminder in a much quicker fashion of what we've been able to discuss here today. And so we'll be getting that to all of you, and as your colleagues download the webinar, they'll have that as a companion piece. So now we've discussed a little bit about framing your story. We're going to think about how to effectively distribute stories. Compelling stories can be told across a variety of different media, and you have lots of channels to choose from when you decide how to distribute your stories. It's important to consider your goals and your intended audiences when making these decisions. Ideally, the organization would approach the story collection process having planned to gather a variety of stories at once, which you could then combine in multiple ways to tell the stories in words, in images, and with video. So this storytelling effort through IL, the team at SRC will focus on providing support to all, the grantees, to strategically use a variety of communications approaches, including social media, a modified Pecha Kucha approach. Don't worry if you don't know what that is. We're going to talk about it in a moment. StoryCorps inspired interviews to help you tell your stories of innovation, success, and lessons learned through the PACIZ grant work. We'll offer trainings and workshops during your upcoming grantee meetings, offer one-on-one TA support throughout the year with grantees are interested and believe that they have stories to tell but would like support around telling them. So we're going to take a couple of minutes to give you a sneak peek about some of the approaches that I'd like to help you adopt in your work to storytell. Social media, as you know, can provide an effective method to deliver key messages to a variety of audiences. Digital tools allow for a way to diversify communication by using various approaches to share multiple types of information with different audiences. And some examples of that, which I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with, are Twitter, which is very small phrases that can be a dynamic combination of text, but also you can add pictures, videos, and links. Creating a hashtag, you can share searchable conversation on any threaded issue, so you can kind of categorize items or topics of interest with stakeholders through Twitter. Facebook is a digital storytelling hub. Many of you very likely use it personally and professionally. It allows for us as stakeholders to congregate in a virtual space. And pages are set up to support two-way communication. Your audience can add their own content, which is a really significant part of storytelling, and then also show their support by making posts, comments, and sharing with their own networks. And finally, digital photo sharing. So pictures can quickly capture and visually share the work and accomplishments that are happening in your project. On a photo sharing platform like Instagram, you can share photos with followers and link pictures across other accounts such as Facebook and Twitter. So we work with you all around how to capitalize on and really use your digital tools, your social media in more robust ways. I think it'll be really great. Some of your projects actually involve social media, and so I think it'll be really great to be able to also have you share with one another kind of in a peer community format the ways that social media are helping you to reach your stakeholders. What in the world is a Pecha Kucha? This is another method that our team is going to be using to support the work. And if you were at the initial PCIZ grantee meeting where we discussed the study on family engagement, you will recognize this Pecha Kucha because you've seen it before. A Pecha Kucha is a quick and simple presentation format. It's a show with a set timeline where you typically show 20 slides that each stay on the screen for 20 seconds before advancing automatically. This format encourages presentations to be concise and engaging. This is a Japanese word that means chit-chat, and developed by architects who would give each other long, boring, and content-overloaded presentations. And they discovered that it would be helpful to confine themselves by focusing on images that really told the story of what they're trying to get across and limited their narrative to a 20-second format per image. So we're doing 20 by 20 because that's kind of long. We're going to work on 8 by 20. So because it is time limited and we know that 20 by 20 might be the appropriate format for a conference or a longer presentation, for shorter story pieces, we found that 8 by 20, which is 8 slides with images on them that have 20 seconds of narrative over each. We call them mini pechacuchas. And so the presentation ends up being a little over 3 minutes. So what we'll do next is give you an example of a mini pechacucha, which will describe the CIZ program, focused on fostering family engagement, first through third grade alignment, and community partnerships across the state.
December 2013, Pennsylvania won a Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge grant. The grant builds upon Pennsylvania's successes to provide more at-risk children, children living in low-income families, language learners, and children with disabilities with quality early learning opportunities to close the achievement gap. Pennsylvania's children with the quality early learning experiences takes a collaborative effort between families, schools, and communities. As Pennsylvania has created local early childhood education community innovation zones, or CIZs, as a key part of the Early Learning Challenge grant effort. Support level are important, but our most innovative and successful strategies are born from local collaboration and solutions. The purpose of the CIZ grants are to recognize, celebrate, and learn from native community-based programs, activities, and strategies to enhance the learning outcomes of young children and reduce the achievement gap by grade 3. The CIZ program will offer 50 grants to neighborhoods serving at-risk elementary schools. Phase 1 began October 2014. 12 communities with exemplary programs in place received intensive supports and local grants to meet one or more of 3 main goals of the program. The goal is to increase family engagement. CIZs are working to support strong partnerships with families to promote children's healthy development. One grantee in Dauphin County developed a new Parents and Partners initiative that works families to lower barriers and offers programming to foster their role as their child's first teacher and best advocate. The goal is to develop stronger relationships between early learning programs and school districts to build birth to third grade alignment. For example, activities in Greene County CIZ promote pre- to third grade alignment among school and community partners with district early childhood coordinator and enhancing transition activities that involve families. The goal is to strengthen the network and coordination of community organizations that serve young children and families. Another CIZ grantee in Luzerne County did the My School, My Community Passport for families, which is a comprehensive listing of recreational and cultural places, organizations, and events in the community. CIZ serves as a valuable laboratory to pilot key innovations. As part of the grant, Pennsylvania will conduct an evaluation to identify best and promising practices so they can be shared with other communities throughout the state and across the nation. About the work of Phase 1 grantees and the process of Phase 2, visit www.pakeys.org.
Great. So I hope that you enjoyed. I mean, this is at this point a little bit dated. I think it was a great example of how the state of Pennsylvania was working to tell the story of the community innovation zones throughout the country. Those Pechacucha was played at a national meeting where there were grantees from all over the country, federal grantees from Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge. Also states had preschool development and expansion grants. And so the story was well received in Pennsylvania, began to get the word out around a successful grant program. I think it's important for all of us to be thinking about how we follow up with those stories and create powerful experiences of the fair within your projects and programs that are experiencing outcomes as it relates to the work you're doing. We'll move on now to another approach that we have used pretty successfully and or say we've adapted pretty successfully, but as you all know, the StoryCorps is a hugely successful storytelling model that is found on NPR. I think if any of you haven't watched listened to StoryCorps interviews before, it is an amazing use of time to get on and listen to some interviews, and we'll probably give you some really great ideas about how this could work in your organization or with your partnership. During your upcoming grantee meetings around November, we'll be collecting and supporting you with sharing stories using an informal process that we've developed that are inspired by StoryCorps. So during the meetings, we'll coordinate an area where you come together with partners from your grantee team or other grantee teams that you've done work with, and interview each other around a set of questions relating to the work you've done. So those questions might be around things like how you became involved in the CIZ work, what were your biggest successes, what were your biggest challenges, who was impacted by the work you're doing, and what are your hopes for moving forward. These stories we're hoping to have professionally edited and shared in downloadable form for your communication views. So we'll be helping those of you who are interested to prepare beforehand and think through questions and who might be part of the team that will be interviewed. And so a traditional StoryCorps format is 2 people, but we've had real success with larger groups being part of the interview. And so one of the things that we wanted to do for you was to play a StoryCorps interview that we did with 2 of the leaders from Oakdale, Deborah Vinny and Deborah Wise, which talk about Pennsylvania's journey to gain kindergarten teacher buy-in into the kindergarten entry assessment process. So this will be about 4 minutes, and we just want you to kind of hear the format and how it works.
I'm Margaret from School Readiness Consulting, and I'm sitting here today with the team from the state of Pennsylvania. Hello, I'm Deb Wise. In the context of the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge Grant, I am the lead on our Kindergarten Entry Inventory, or KEI project.
And I'm Debbie Ruveni. I'm the director of the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge Grant for Pennsylvania. I actually came in after the grant was already written and approved for Pennsylvania, so I had to learn when I came in. Tell us what you think the most important work to come out of where you are now and what you would really like to see happen with that work. So the Entry Inventory project was really an interesting journey. We started the project pre-Race to the Top. We knew there was a federal push for collecting outcomes as children were entering kindergarten. We didn't have funds, so we were like, well, we can't purchase tools. So we said, well, let's develop our own tool. We wanted the tools to be comprehensive, so we first brought together teams of stakeholders, different constituents from different program types, education, early intervention. There was, all sorts of people at the table. Everyone had their own perspectives and threw into the hat all of the standards pretty much. The first rendition of the tool had over 70 indicators. And from the beginning, we were very conscious that we would get buy-in from the we were asking to implement the kindergarten teachers. So we were very intentional about putting with them and with their learning providers and getting their feedback. Well, you can imagine the tool is too overwhelming. It's too many indicators. Really took to heart all of their feedback. At that, we were writing for the first Race to the Top application. So we revised the tool. So we ended up refining the tool to 30 standards-based indicators with 4 additional health and wellness indicators that were collected in the demographic screen. 2014, our first year of our Race to the Top funding, we rolled out to our
first phase of implementation to cohort 1, which were our focus and priority schools in Pennsylvania, our lowest 15% of performing schools. And then we had the first cohort, 25 voluntary schools that also implemented. We are now implementing cohort 2, which our numbers in our voluntary schools have significantly, almost 3 times increased, which is really exciting. What's really interesting about the work is
Great. So that gives you a little bit of a taste of what the story-inspired interview process might be like. You'll be working together with a facilitator from our team, but really interviewing one another, and our job will be to just kind of help that conversation move along. And as I said, there's some important next steps that we'd love to engage in with you. The first is really to have tell us what would be most helpful for you. And so we've designed a Google survey that allows you to very quickly, we promise, less than 5 minutes, go in and give us some thoughts about what might be most helpful in terms of us supporting your communications work throughout the upcoming year, both in preparation for the grantee meetings in the fall and as well as afterwards. And so we'd love to hear from you and get started with those of you who are interested as soon as we can. And so it would be great to hear what your interests are so that not only we can do individual work, but we can really look at the themes and trends across grantees and see what the interests are and make sure that we cater the offerings that we are providing to the real needs that you all have and the interests you all are demonstrating. So the link is here. We'll also, when we send out the recording and the 2-page kind of condensed pin, we will send that link out as well. And so you have multiple opportunities to see the link. And we encourage you to go ahead and fill that out as quickly as you can. And as I said, we would love to get started with you. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
I have a question.
Sure.
In CIZ, we're talking about working with the school districts, and I was wondering if anybody had any suggestions or ideas about school districts getting involved in social media. I know there has been some hesitancy on the part of our school district, and I was just wondering if there was ideas as far as policies, if anybody has any to share.
Question is there anybody on the call that has any thoughts about or experiences with school districts and engagement in social media? It doesn't sound like there's essentially somebody on the call that might have an answer at this time. We'd be happy to check into that. I mean, there's lots of districts that we work with that are very active on social media and have policies that not only protect the privacy of children and families, but that also then allow stories that are impactful to be used and told through social media. So we can absolutely include that in the materials that we share with you and with others.
Thank you. Be wonderful. Very appreciated. Thank you.
Of course. So, Boyle is within a district, and there is a public relations person who oversees social media. So thanks, Ashley, for sharing that. And I think that is absolutely something that we see. So in several instances, I think the reason districts don't do as much social media as one might expect is just because of a human capacity. So the bigger the school district, the more likely you are to have public relations team, I would think. But thanks for sharing that. questions? Oh, well, we have Nicole Sharp's information here. Her email is sharp with an at the end at schoolreadinessconsulting.com. You are absolutely welcome to contact her for any follow-up questions that you might have. She will be receiving the Google survey results, so she'll be able to reach back out to anybody who completes that survey. And on behalf of Dell, as well as our team at SRC, we would say thank you so much for your time today. We all know how busy of a month audit is, and so we're very appreciative that you took the time. Very much looking forward to partnering with you to be able to assist you in telling your meaningful stories, and we look forward to seeing you later in the fall when you come together as a community to talk about your work. So thank you again for your time, and have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.